everybody doing? I see some familiar faces. Veo unas caras muy familiares como la de Selena. Hola, Selena.
How are you, Anna?
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So my name is Ana Cano Morales. Mi nombre es Ana Cano Morales, and I was born in Central Falls. Nací en la ciudad de Central Falls. Mis padres son colombianos. My parents are of Colombian heritage. ¿Me pueden escuchar bien? Can you all hear me fine? Muy bien. Soy hija de inmigrantes. I'm a daughter of immigrants. Mis padres llegaron aquí en los 1960s, a long time ago. They came here in the 60s, which is, you know, for all of you who are very young, still is a long time ago. They came here to work in the factories. Ellos llegaron aquí a trabajar a las factorías. Como muchos inmigrantes vienen buscando trabajo, empleo. Like many immigrants, they come here looking for work. They come here for jobs para mejorar sus vidas y para seguir adelante con sus hijos, right? Como to improve their lives and to also offer their family and their children a better option or a better future. La comunidad de Central Falls para mí es algo muy especial. My community of Central Falls is something very special to me. Yo nunca me olvido de dónde vengo ni de mis raíces. I never forget where I come from or my roots. Eso es parte de mi identidad, parte del desarrollo mío como una persona, como una mujer latina, como colombiana y como líder. It's part of my identity. It's part of who I am as a woman, who I am as a Latina, and who I am as a leader, right? So yo ando este mundo con todas esas identidades, como mujer, como latina, como colombiana, y como hija de inmigrantes. So I walk around this earth with all of those identities with me. And I'll tell you a little bit later what I do with that kind of work at Rhode Island College. Más tarde voy a hablar un poquito sobre de qué hago con todas esas identidades, todas esas experiencias en el trabajo actual que estoy haciendo en Rhode Island College. Bueno, crecí. I grew up y viví entre Central Falls y Pawtucket. I lived in between both communities, Central Falls and Pawtucket. Y para decirte la verdad, era solamente por conveniencia a donde mi mamá y mi papá podían encontrar un apartamento que sea no muy caro, ¿me entiendes? And so it was really a point of necessity for us to go back and forth between Central Falls, Pawtucket, not really Providence, but Central Falls and Pawtucket, because we were looking for cheap rent, right? Affordable place to live. Y como muchos de nosotros jóvenes de el centro urbano, the urban center youth, we're kind of caught between kind of being transient, right? La movilidad is necesario, right? In order to survive, it's necessary to kind of like, where are we going next? Or what are we going to do next? Or sometimes the job doesn't work out, or somebody loses a job, or somebody needs to go move in with somebody to help them out. And so yo crecí también así. Pero lo constante, but the constant in my life was that I had an exceptional mother and father and family that always stuck together and believed in me and kept me safe and gave me all the love that I needed. So lo esencial y lo más estable que pude tener yo fue que yo tenía una mamá y un papá y una comunidad y una familia que me daban amor, me daban seguridad, me daban lo básico, ¿me entiende? Pero lo básico no es lo básico, es lo máximo, ¿me entiende? Cuando uno tiene eso, uno se siente seguro y se siente contento y se siente como capaz de hacer más. So a lot of people say that that's your basic human needs, right? To have food, to have family, to have love, but really that's everything. If you don't have that, then you don't feel secure. You don't feel like you're able to. You don't feel confident. You don't feel like you can take on the world. And so I was very lucky because I did have that in my house. Even though we didn't have fancy things, we didn't always have money for groceries, we didn't always have money for, I mean, sometimes they had to shut off the electricity, or we had to borrow a car to go somewhere, or, you know, life happens, right? Entonces, that's how I grew up. Así crecí yo. Desde muy pequeña edad, tratando como de resolver problemas en mi familia propia y también en la comunidad. So that's how I grew up. I grew up trying to problem solve, not just in my own family, but also problem solve within my community, my immediate community. Y porque yo aprendí el inglés antes de mis padres y antes de muchas de las personas que me rodeaban, yo era la intérprete, yo era la persona que les ayudaba a conocer el sistema, a sobrevivir. So I learned English before my immediate family learned English. And so I quickly became kind of this navigator, this translator, this, you know, I remember this, like literally hiding in my room because like somebody would knock on the door and they're like, can we borrow your daughter? Because we need her to read this letter we just got in the mail. We don't understand what it is. And I'm like, oh no, another letter I gotta read. Entonces, yo me acuerdo que cuando la gente tocaba la puerta o decía, me presta la niña, me presta la niña porque me vino una correspondencia y yo no la sé leer. Ella me puede explicar o me puede acompañar a una cita que yo tengo que yo no entiendo, yo no hablo inglés. So that was my childhood. Now, fast forward, I learned in human behavior classes or psychology classes that is actually a form of child trauma that we live as immigrant children. Yo después aprendí mucho más después en la universidad, cuando estaba yo tomando unos cursos de desarrollo humano, que eso es una forma de trauma infantil, trauma de niñez. It's called the parentified child. Se llama un niño, un joven parentificado, I guess it's called, I don't know how you translate it, pero a parentified child. Que emocionalmente no tenemos la capacidad de entender lo que estamos haciendo, pero lo hacemos. So it means that emotionally we don't have the development yet to understand what we're doing or why we're doing it or in the situations that we're in. Like, why would a 9-year-old understand anything about a car being repossessed? A 9-year-old typically doesn't understand why, you know, what does it call? A tow truck is going to come and take a car because the person didn't pay for the car payment. Like that typically for an 8-year-old doesn't, and I knew what that was as 8 years old. So esos ejemplos de temas adultos o temas económicos o temas legales o temas sociales que son más para adultos o para gente ya grande, más madura, los estaba lidiando yo, los estaba navegando yo. So those kinds of issues and themes that typically are what adults have to deal with when they grow up, I was assuming them and I was the one that was trying to figure it out. So that's my childhood, that's how I grew up. Así es que crecí yo. Pero el enfoque siempre era estudiar, estudiar, estudiar. The focus was always from my parents and from my family, you got to go to school, you got to go to school, you got to school. Because quickly, I became really smart. Porque bien rápidamente me veían como una persona inteligente, ¿me entiende? Yo podía navegar los dos mundos de inglés perfectamente y el español también. Hay gente que dice que tengo el acento colombiano, a veces dicen que no tengo el acento colombiano, pero a mí no me importa. El hecho es que yo puedo comunicarme como una persona bilingüe y bicultural. Y eso es muy, muy importante, porque eso ha sido para mí una bendición. Como una profesional en este país, ha sido una bendición. Más tarde hablamos un poquito de eso. So for me, it's been a blessing to be able to code switch, go back and forth. Basically what I'm doing today, right? Going back and forth and navigating my English language perfectly well and navigating the Spanish language perfectly well. And that for me has been very important, especially for my career as a professional. It's been a blessing, actually. Not a problem. And I think that's the problem with society, that it labels people. Que usted no sabe suficiente inglés, usted no sabe suficiente español, usted no sabe suficiente portugués. El hecho es que sabemos mucho. The thing is that we actually do know a lot, but the system, el sistema, doesn't know what to do with that. No sabe qué hacer con eso. Así es que Erin sí sabe qué hacer con eso. Erin es una de las facultades que sí saben qué hacer con esa bendición que tenemos, that blessing. There are very few people who know what to do with that, and I was just calling out Erin because she does know what to do with that. That is an asset. So, estudié en la Shea High School, que queda en Pawtucket. Me gradué de la Shea High School. I graduated from Shea High School en 1986. Haga la matemática, do the math. I'm 52, tengo 52 años. Entonces, bueno, mi mamá y mi papá, you have to go to school, you have to go to school, tiene que ir a la universidad, tiene que ir a la universidad, aunque, even though my mom and dad are always, you know, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, they didn't go to college themselves. Ellos no fueron a la universidad en Colombia. Ellos trabajaban con sus manos, pero eran muy inteligentes. They were very smart people, very, gente muy culta, gente muy educada. You can be educated and not be formally educated. Do you know what I mean? Uno puede ser una persona educada, una persona cortés, una persona amable, una persona buena y no haber ido a una universidad. Esos son mis padres. Eso eran mis padres. So I did go to college. I went through the talent development program at URI. Entonces yo fui a la Universidad de Rhode Island con la ayuda de un programa que se llama TD, Talent Development, que todavía existe hoy. Y TD me abrió a mí las puertas, como ha abierto las puertas de miles de personas como yo o como ustedes. Y me gradué with I don't know how to say this in Spanish, pero me gradué with an undergraduate of Human Development and Family Studies, el desarrollo humano y estudios familiares, con a double major. Yo tuve 2 concentraciones o 2 grados. El segundo fue con Latin American Literature, literatura latinoamericana. Porque when I got to URI through the Talent Development Program, I graduated with a bachelor's degree with Human Development and Family Studies. And I had a double major. The other major was Latin American Literature. When I got to URI, I really discovered even further my Latin heritage. Cuando llegué a la Universidad de Rhode Island, yo descubrí más las raíces o la herencia latina que vive de mí con la lectura. I learned that through literature, through reading. And so I read the classics. Leí los clásicos de Cervantes, de Gabriel García Márquez. These are all like, I'm naming some classic authors in Latin America. And I really, really learned a lot from just reading that and doing the analysis with my peers and with my professors at URI. Aprendí mucho con el análisis y la discusión. Incluso yo aprendía palabras todos los días nuevas. I learned words and concepts and cultural idioms every day. Con las tertulias, with the talks, the charrettes that we used to have. With those discussions. I actually learned more than I ever learned in my public school education. Yo no aprendí eso en mis clases en las escuelas que estaba asistiendo en Pawtucket o Central Falls. Yo no aprendí nada de eso. Lo poquito que yo sabía, lo sabía era de mi mamá y mi papá. Pero como ellos no me podían hablar en detalle de eso, es algo bien triste, ¿me entiende? Que no lo pude ver en la historia, en la cívica, en las clases, en el currículum de las clases que estaba tomando yo en la escuela. So it's very sad because a lot of us who do have diverse backgrounds and identities, we don't learn this from our education in school. We don't learn this from elementary school. We don't learn this in our social studies or in our classes, and we just don't learn it, right? We learn about, you know, the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and all this stuff, but we don't really learn about America is one big place. And to be American means being Central American, means being South American, means being Caribbean, means having just, you know, participated in diaspora and the slave trade. We don't learn any of that. Entonces, bueno, cuando llegué a la universidad, yo aprendí todas esas cosas y me fascinó. Me fascinó y quería saber yo más. A mí me encanta leer. Una cosa que le digo yo a ustedes, lean. Lean todo lo que quieran leer. Lean, vean documentarios, vean películas, escuchen a un libro por audio, aprendan algo diferente hoy que no lo sabían ayer y que no lo vas a ver mañana. Trate de hacer preguntas que usted reciba una respuesta, que usted aprenda algo. And so one of the things that really helped me in college was reading, believe it or not. Just being in a quiet place and reading. Watching documentaries, watching movies, listening to books or discussions on audio. You can still do that now. Because I think the more you ask questions that you're going to get the answers to, you're going to be a better informed person that you were yesterday and less informed than you will be tomorrow if you put it into practice. Bueno, me gradué de la Universidad de Rhode Island. Empecé a trabajar como una trabajadora social. So after graduation at URI, I started to work as a social worker. I lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a little while. Me mudé de Rhode Island y viví en Florida, en Fort Lauderdale, cerquita de Miami. Y trabajé en un Department of Health, en un condado de salud público. Back in the day, en esa época eran los 90, los early 90s. Y la pandemia de los 90 era HIV, AIDS, HIV y SIDA. Y también no había la pandemia o la epidemia de opiates, de opioids, heroína. La pandemia o la epidemia de los 90 era crack cocaine, cocaína de crack. Entonces a mí me tocó mucho trabajar con individuos y familias que se estaban muriendo de adicción y también se estaban muriendo de SIDA. Y hay veces se estaban muriendo de las dos cosas. Fue un trabajo muy, muy difícil, pero aprendí mucho. It was a job that allowed me to work with people who are addicted to crack cocaine in particular, because that was the crisis, the drug crisis at the time. And then also HIV and AIDS back in the early 90s was the pandemic of the 90s. Exactly. I mean, sometimes when I hear some of the things that we talk about now, I'm like, oh my God, that's HIV. That's 1990s all over again. And so it was very hard work. It was very hard work. Trabajo muy difícil, pero pude utilizar el hecho que hablo español e inglés, but I could utilize the fact that I was bilingual. And so that came in very handy working with families and the community health workers. Después de eso, regresé a Rhode Island y me enfoqué en mi carrera aquí en Rhode Island. After coming back from Florida, I came back to Rhode Island and I came back to stay. I came back to focus on my own career here in my home state. Trabajé en Women and Infants Hospital haciendo research con mujeres que habían dado a luz, women who have had, I did research at Women and Infants Hospital with women who had just had a baby, who were addicted when they had a baby, and so the baby tested positive for, again, a lot of my work focused on maternal and child health and supports around public health. Entonces, mucho de mi trabajo, cuando yo regresé, se enfocó en la salud materna, la salud de la mujer, reproductive rights, la salud reproductiva de la mujer, HIV, STDs, todo que tenga que ver con la salud pública enfocado en la mujer. Fue el trabajo mío en Women and Infants y también en los centros de salud. That was my work mostly at Women and Infants Hospital and also in the Providence Community Health Centers. And then, y después, apliqué para el MSW program en Rhode Island College. Apliqué para el programa de MSW de Rhode Island College y me gradué con un MSW de Rhode Island College en 1999. Y aprendí mucho de las clases. I learned a lot from the classes at MSW program. It's a great program. A lot of my professors who were there and they were my professors are still there now, and I'm like a vice president now, so it's kind of weird. Es un poquito raro porque muchos de los profesores que estaban allá cuando me enseñaban a mí todavía están allá y yo soy una vicepresidenta ahí diciéndole a ellos qué tienen que hacer y qué no tienen que hacer. Es un poquito incómodo a veces, pero bueno, ¿qué se va a hacer? Trabajé con el MSW, con el posgrado. Me fui a trabajar a la Fundación de Rhode Island. Trabajé 10 años en la Fundación de Rhode Island. I worked 10 years at the Rhode Island Foundation. The Rhode Island Foundation is the largest community foundation in Rhode Island. It's the only community foundation in Rhode Island. I worked 10 years there. And I feel like I grew up at the Rhode Island Foundation. Yo pienso que yo como que me desarrollé más en la Fundación de Rhode Island. Aprendí muchísimo. I actually feel like I earned an equivalent of a PhD working at the Rhode Island Foundation. I don't have a PhD, but if I were to have received one, I would have received one after working 10 years at the Rhode Island Foundation. Yo no tengo un doctorado, como lo tiene la doctora Papa, pero si lo hubiera tenido, lo hubiera sido otorgado en la Fundación de Rhode Island después de 10 años. La cantidad de gente que conocí yo, la cantidad de información que tuve que analizar yo, las evaluaciones, las inversiones, las entrevistas con las personas, navegando dos mundos, ¿me entiende? When I think about all of the research, all of the analysis, the data analysis, the investment in the community with grants, the managing of those grants, the management of that. And then the other side of it is the donor part, having to cultivate a donor, tener el privilegio de convencer a alguien que es un millonario o un billonario de que nos deje a nosotros el recurso para nosotros poderle darle ese recurso a las escuelas de Providence o a Progreso Latino o a Fuerza Laboral. Ese es el trabajo mío. Yo tenía que no solamente trabajar con Progreso Latino para ver cuáles son sus necesidades, pero también trabajar con ese ricachón, una persona que tiene mucho, mucho dinero, para convencerles a ellos que esta caridad, aunque él o ella lo piense que es caridad, es una inversión en el estado de Rhode Island que es compartido de todos, por todos. So I really had to work both sides of it. Again, you remember my code switching when I was a little girl? That I had to go between worlds and navigate and translate? I'm doing that again. I did that at Rhode Island Foundation. I did that in Fort Lauderdale when I had to navigate between the community and the Department of Health. I'm still doing that. Todavía lo estoy haciendo. Esa balance entre, y ser como un intermediario entre un grupo y otro grupo, que son completamente diferentes. Después de la fundación de Rhode Island, me fui a ser directora del Latino Policy Institute. After the Rhode Island Foundation, the 10 years there, I became the executive director of the Latino Policy Institute, que forma parte de Roger Williams University Law School, que forma parte de Roger Williams University, la Escuela de Leyes. Y eso lo hice por 5 años. I did that for 5 years. Y me enfoqué en analizar los latinos de Rhode Island. I focused on really doing a lot of data analysis and commissioning reports and research on Latinos in Rhode Island. So it was interesting because now I was advocating, and I think I've always been an advocate by DNA. I've had to be an advocate. Estaba abogando yo ya en una forma muy diferente porque estaba abogando yo por el camino de policy, de la política. Y informando policy, política, informando decisiones al nivel del Estado o hay veces al nivel de una región sobre una población creciente. So now I was really being an advocate with a very different strategy. I was being an advocate using data and research and numbers, influencing policies at the statewide level and sometimes at the regional level, or investments in budgets, or program development or expansion based on evidence, based on statistics. I got involved with the census. I got involved with ELL funding formula, la fórmula que le otorga diferentes o más recursos para los distritos escolares que tienen un nivel alto de personas que están aprendiendo otro idioma que no sea su idioma natal. I got involved with the funding formula, with just a lot of other kind of information, programs and policies at the statewide level, informed by the Latino Policy Institute's numbers. So that's kind of my professional track. In between, esa es como la trayectoria profesional mía. En medio de todo eso, in my spare time, como si no tenía nada más que hacer, dediqué mi servicio público y como voluntaria serví como la presidenta de la Junta Escolar de Central Falls. So in my spare time, I gave back time as a public servant, as a volunteer. This is not paid. I didn't get anything for this. Just a lot of headaches and a lot of satisfaction. Mucha satisfacción y muchos dolores de cabezas, pero nada de recompensa. Eso fue algo que para mí fue un llamado. It was like a calling to be able to give back to the community that had given me so much when I was a little girl. Entonces fui presidenta de la Junta Escolar. I was the president of the school board at Central Falls for over 10 years. Actually, it was about 13 years. Until recently, hasta este agosto. Y hicimos muchos cambios. Muchos de ellos dicen que fueron controversiales. Yo no lo veo así. Yo soy una persona muy práctica. I'm a very practical person, and although some people might have thought that some of my decisions or some of our decisions as a district might have been controversial around school choice, around charter schools, around biliteracy seals, around just a lot of policies around hiring English language learners, ESL certified teachers as a must, as a deal breaker if you don't have that to work in Central Falls. I don't see them as controversial. I see them as very practical things that school districts like Central Falls have to do in order to really serve our students. Entonces, muchas de las cosas que hicimos en Central Falls al nivel del school board, de la junta escolar, fue instituir políticas o pólizas o prácticas que en realidad pusieron o ponían al estudiante en el centro. Y fueron cosas que tuvimos que hacer, que había resistencia, porque en cualquier cambio que uno vaya a hacer va a haber resistencia. Y las personas no somos todas que pensamos igual. And anything that you do, any changes that you do, you're always going to get some resistance and some pushback, and that's okay. We're not all thinking the same. We all have different opinions about things, but it was a very fulfilling time in my life. At the same time, I served in the Rhode Island Board of Education. Al mismo tiempo, yo también serví 4 años como voluntaria para el estado de Rhode Island en la junta escolar de todas las escuelas de Rhode Island. Básicamente la junta o el consejo que trabaja con con quien es la comisionadora, whoever is the commissioner. At the time, it was Deborah Gist, la comisionadora Deborah Gist, y yo formé parte de ese consejo, the Rhode Island Board of Education. Aprendí mucho. En todas las etapas de mi vida, puedo decir que aprendí mucho. Aprendí mucho. Ahora, actualmente estoy en Rhode Island College, soy colega de Erin. También es algo como muy personal para mí estar otra vez en Rhode Island College. It's something very personal for me to be back at Rhode Island College, because as I shared with you before, I was once a student there, a graduate student. So seeing myself back, especially being part of the leadership team of the college, is very personally satisfying for me. Es algo muy gratificante ver que cuando antes era un estudiante allá en Rhode Island College, ahora formo parte del liderazgo de la escuela, del colegio. Es algo para mí muy personal y muy bonito. I make up one of 8 members of the president's cabinet. Yo formo parte de uno de 8 de los miembros del gabinete del presidente de Rhode Island College. El presidente es mexicano-americano, él es chicano. Él nació en el oeste del país, en Denver, en Colorado. Muy diferente que yo, que nací en Central Falls. Somos los dos latinos, pero podemos ser negro y blanco, porque somos completamente diferentes. Él no habla español, o habla muy poquito español. Yo sí hablo español. Anyway, el gabinete del presidente es muy diverso. Formamos un gabinete extremadamente diverso, que yo pienso que en Rhode Island no existe un gabinete como el de Rhode Island College. I really do feel like we have a very diverse cabinet at Rhode Island College. Even though the president is Mexican-American, he was born in another part of the country, in Denver, in Colorado, and so he doesn't speak Spanish that well or at all. And so he and I, even though we're both Latinos on the cabinet, he is very different than I am, you know. He's very uncomfortable eating a chicharrón or an empanada, and I love chicharrón and empanada. So we're just different, right? We're just different, even though we're both Latinos, right? We have another Latino, Eric Rivera, who is the interim vice president for student success. He's going to be leaving us soon to pursue other personal interests. Él es ecuatoriano de the Bronx, New York. So he's Ecuadorian, Eric Rivera, and he's from the Bronx, New York. Completely different New Yorkers from Rhode Islanders. Y entonces, we're, muy diferente. Tres latinos en la gabinete y tres latinos muy diferentes. Así es que la diversidad existe dentro de la diversidad. So diversity exists within the diversity. And so there's always learning to do. So siempre uno puede aprender de alguien algo. Los colombianos, yo soy colombiana, so los colombianos hacemos las cosas de una manera. No tiene que decir que también lo vamos a hacer lo mismo o decir las mismas palabras que digamos una persona que es dominicana o una persona que es boliviana. Somos diferentes, ¿me entiende? Pero tenemos algo de identidad que nos une, ¿me entiende? Hay como una hermandad, you know, like there's like a brotherhood or a sisterhood. There's something there that brings us together, but we all have our distinct national pride, right? Our heritage pride. Like I have my beads on. Here it is. Amarillo, azul y rojo. Esa es mi Colombia, right? And so it doesn't make me less American. It just means I'm very proud of who I am, right? And hey, red, white, and blue for 4th of July, that's pride too. But I think we all have a lot to learn. Así es que la identidad que uno celebra es algo que forma parte de uno y aunque yo siempre me pongo mis colores, mi tricolor, también celebro el red, white, and blue, el rojo, blanco y azul del Estados Unidos porque también soy americana. Así es que, bueno, he hablado demasiado. I've spoken so much. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee now. And I'm ready for questions, whatever you want to ask me. I don't know how we're doing with time. I think I've spoken for half an hour. Yo creo que yo ya he hablado por media hora. A nivel personal, on a personal note, I am married. Soy casada, para que sepan. Felizmente, con un caballero que se llama William. I'm married very happily for 22 years. With over there doing his work on his computer. Está por allí haciendo su trabajo también en su computadora. Tenemos dos hijos. We have two sons. Yo tengo dos hijos. Uno de 18 años que acabó de terminar su primer año de la universidad. I have an 18-year-old son who just finished his first year of URI. He went to URI. He's going to URI. Y otro niño de 14 años. The other son is 14 and he will be going to high school next year. Y se va para high school el año que entra. Y tengo un perro. I have a dog. Él es un bulldog. He's a bulldog. Y él es de Medellín, Colombia. Él es un inmigrante. Y él no habla inglés. Es como un bebé. Y siempre decimos, like my bulldog, he's from Medellín, Colombia, seriously. My husband's uncle came to visit from Medellín, Colombia. El tío de mi esposo vino a visitarnos hace como, 7 años, 8 años. And he brought him to us as a gift. He was a puppy. Era un pequeñito, un cachorrito, un puppy. And now he's 8. Entonces siempre decimos que ese es de Colombia, no entiende la vida de acá de los americanos, o está viviendo el sueño americano. He's living the American dream. Porque ese perro vive mejor que nosotros, because that dog is always living better than we do. So anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you and sharing with you all a little bit of who I am.
Muchas gracias, Ana. Thank you so much. So we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. So if students have questions or mentors have questions, alguien tiene una pregunta para Ana, we can spend some time dialoguing back and forth. I see Roberto is asking, ¿qué nombre tiene tu perro?
El perro se llama Niño.
Oh, se llama Niño.
Niño. Él se llama Niño Morales. Y él es blanquito. El blanco tiene un lunar aquí café.
I have a question, actually.
Yes.
I want to say thank you, Ana, for joining us today. I appreciate your presentation, and I hope everybody did. And I do want to ask, for those who, as English is their second language, how can they be able to overcome, you know, those obstacles, especially stereotypes of those who are English as their second language, because that is very hard to overcome. And, you know, there is a lot of, you know, backlash with that. And how can those students, you know, overcome those backlashes that they experience and like while they're trying to get to where they're going?
Yeah, that's a great question, Salina. And thank you for your warm welcome. There's a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, there are practices in schools or in your job, in organizations that are discriminatory. So hay prácticas que usted tal vez vea o you will experience it, usted va a tener la experiencia que pueden ser discriminatoria. And so knowing what your rights are, saber cuáles son sus derechos, porque a uno no lo pueden discriminar basado a su identidad natal. So you cannot be discriminated based on your heritage or your country of origin. And so you have to understand, I think, and you have to learn more about what your rights are in any institution or in any school. Get involved, también involúcrese en, digamos, reformas o I want to say something like student forums or things that are involving the changes that you want to see in your schools, right? Or the changes that you want to see in your colleges. Su voz, your voice matters. Su voz es muy importante. Hay muchas veces que planeamos o las instituciones, organizaciones planean algo y no tienen en cuenta una persona que está aprendiendo un idioma. Ese es el trabajo mío. Actually, that is my job. My job is to say, hey, wait a minute. Para una persona que está aprendiendo un idioma, ¿cómo va a funcionar eso? ¿Cómo vamos a hacer eso? ¿Cómo van a entender? ¿Cómo lo van a poder hacer? ¿Cuáles son las oportunidades para ellos? So it really is making sure that there's somebody at the seat of the table. And maybe it's not you, but maybe it's asking the right questions about who is at the table advocating to making sure that we have the best opportunity and the best shot at being successful. A nivel personal, on the personal level, I hear what you're saying, Selena, in terms of how do people who are learning another language or who are bicultural, bilingual, how do they kind of overcome barriers that they may have, maybe personal barriers, tal vez una barrera personal, ¿me entiende? Como un bloqueo. Pensar positivo. Usted sabe en su propia mente que la verdad es que cuando una persona está aprendiendo otro idioma, son muy inteligentes. When somebody is speaking, so put in your head that this is not, everybody's telling you there's something wrong with you. You have an accent. You don't understand. Your writing is not where it needs to be. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're not pronouncing it. They're trying to kind of take away the essence of who you are. It's part of your identity, right? And so it's interesting because I was recently at yo estaba en una reunión cuando un muchachito, un niño, estaba presentándole a personas blancas que no hablaban otro idioma sino inglés. So I was recently at a meeting where there was a young boy, he was maybe 12, 13, who was presenting his science project to a group of people who happened to be white and happened not to speak any other language other than English. And they were having a really difficult time understanding him because of his accent. He was Cape Verdean, él era caboverdiano, entonces tenía un acento portugués creol, poquito. Entonces ellos decían, I can't hear you, can you speak up? I can't hear you. Entonces este niño, so this boy did the most remarkable thing. Este niño hizo lo máximo. He started presenting in Portuguese. Se olvidó de ellos y dijo, you know what? You can't understand me in English? Okay, let's see how you can understand me in Creole. Y empezó a hacer esa presentación en Portuguese Creole, los dejó con la boca abierta. He left them with like their mouths dropped open because they're like, wow. I think they realized not only was this boy brilliant, but he was trying so hard to translate his brilliance from Portuguese to English for them. And all they could say was, I can't hear you. I don't understand what you're saying. Los puso en su lugar. He put them in their place, basically. And that turned into such a beautiful discussion after, not with the boy in the room, after the boy left. I raised my hand. I'm like, do you see what just happened? Yo les dije, I'm like, ustedes acabaron de ver lo que pasó. Él nos enseñó a nosotros la inteligencia que tiene ese niño. Los que son deficientes somos ustedes que no hablan otro idioma. The people who are deficient are you all who don't know you don't understand him because you don't speak Portuguese. So I think sometimes personally we have to own it. We have to be proud. Tenemos que tener orgullo propio de las personas que somos. Y sabe que hay personas que tienen 40, 50, 60, que todavía tienen su acento, que todavía no hablan perfectamente el inglés, que todavía no escriben perfectamente el inglés. Y son muy exitosas. Muy exitosas. And so that's how I would answer that, Selena.
Anna, I have a question. By the way, my name is Carmen. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Carmen.
Hello. So I know a lot of women of color who are in positions of leadership often experience imposter syndrome. Have you ever experienced that? And for those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's just feelings of self-doubt that often overcome you and make you feel like you don't belong there. So yeah, have you ever experienced something along the lines of that?
Every day. Hi, Carmen, nice to meet you. Yes, every day. I experienced it this morning when I had a leadership team meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning and we're talking about the budget and I was like, imposter syndrome, what am I doing here? I don't understand this. Do I really know what it means to put this budget together? Am I really the right person for this? Like every single day, especially for women and women of color who are constantly hearing messages that we're not enough, that we don't know enough, that a man has to explain something to us. Sí, yo lo que Carmen me está diciendo, yo lo he sentido y lo siento todos los días, especialmente cuando tengo una posición de liderazgo e incluso esta mañana cuando estábamos analizando el presupuesto, el budget de Rhode Island College, yo me puse a pensar, yo sí sé algo de esto, yo sí entiendo eso, yo ¿por qué estoy aquí? Sí estoy cualificada para eso y yo pienso que es porque muchos de nosotros como mujeres de color, recibimos esos mensajes constantemente que no somos suficientes, que no tenemos la propia información, que no somos tough enough, right? Que no tenemos el valor de hacer cosas, grandes o difíciles. Entonces, sí, yeah, Carmen, I all the time. But you know what? I'm getting better at calling it out.
Mm-hmm.
Estoy como poniéndome un poquito más cómoda en decirle a mis colegas, especialmente los colegas blancos, que yo sí sé algo, que yo sí soy parte del equipo por mis cualificaciones,
Mm-hmm.
no porque soy latina y una mujer, entonces check. So I am getting better at calling it out, especially my white colleagues, to let them know that they're making me feel like I don't belong there. It's all part of sense of belonging, right? It's all part of, I described the team earlier as being very, very diverse. Yo ahorita estaba hablando que el gabinete del presidente es muy diverso y lo es. La mayoría de las personas del gabinete son mujeres.
Mm.
So, hay una dinámica de gender que tenemos que manejar. y tenemos que entender para que todos nos sintamos like comfortable, cómodos con nuestro liderazgo. But yeah, that's a great question. That's a great comment. I think women have to build each other up. Las mujeres nos tenemos que alimentar y ayudarnos la una al otro. Por ejemplo, cuando Erin me llamó a mí y me dijo, yo necesito una persona que venga a hablar con mis estudiantes. Yo podría decir, no, you know what, Erin, that's your problem. Eso es su clase. Yo no tengo tiempo para eso. No, a mí me dijo, you know what, yo hago tiempo. We'll do it. We have to support each other as women. Especialmente las mujeres que somos minoría, nos tenemos que apoyar la una al otro. We have to help each other and build each other up, not push each other down. Y los hombres, también yo sé que aquí hay hombres, varones aquí en esta casa, también nos tienen que ayudar. Hay veces no son ustedes los que saben todo. Hay veces pueden ustedes hablar menos y dejar que las mujeres tomen el asiento de al frente, ¿me entiende? Y ser un buen amigo, un buen colega. You know, I was just saying that sometimes the guys can do their part too by calling it out and saying, you know what, like, so-and-so really has a great idea. We should listen to her and follow her lead. I think that's the best thing that you can do also as a man.
Well, thank you, Anna, for being really honest. I really appreciate that, honestly, because I've experienced those feelings throughout college. You know, I'm a first-generation college student, Puerto Rican and Dominican, and being in education classes where it's mostly white women, I felt that imposter syndrome. So I appreciate you being honest. Like, it's an everyday thing that we are constantly battling, but we're being more self-conscious, aware of it. So thank you.
Carmen, colleges were not built for me or you. Think about that. These systems are not here for us. We're here, and these systems don't know what to do with us because they're still operating as if they were built for other people. And so it's constantly. Hoy puede ser la universidad, puede ser un hospital, puede ser un negocio, puede ser una casa estatal, puede ser una oficina de política, you know, like fill in the blank. These systems were not made for us. And so it's no wonder that we don't feel like we belong.
And only 10%, just a statistics fact, only 10% of Latinas actually pursue a higher education and actually complete it. So it's a big thing, you know? But thank you, Anna. Like, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna. Welcome and thank you. My name is Frida. I'm a guidance counselor at Mount Pleasant High School. And I just thought that what you shared today was just so rich, and your story is so extensive. I can almost see it in a book. I don't know if that's something you're thinking about doing, but I had a question about, like, you talked a little bit about being at the table and how that's something that, you know, as a person of color, we want. And I'm wondering how responsive the folks that you work with are with the initiatives that you try to pass at RIC, because I know folks who work in higher ed in similar positions, and they face a lot of resistance. So I'm just wondering, in your instance, how that's been for you.
Great question. Thank you, Freda. So in terms of resistance, it starts with top, right? It starts with leadership. And the president is very supportive and really truly believes in the value of inclusive excellence. And so, just to say it in Spanish, que siempre cuando uno va a hacer algo, la resistencia es menos cuando de la cabeza de la organización o de la institución hay apoyo, ¿me entiende? Y el presidente sí apoya y cree en el valor de la inclusividad o la diversidad, equidad e inclusividad. So that has helped tremendously, that from the top, the expectation is that this is important. The fact that I report directly to the president is different than other members of cabinet. El hecho que yo reporto directamente al presidente también me ha ayudado a mí porque el boss mío es el presidente. El boss mío no es un profesor, con todo el respeto a Erin. So my boss is not a faculty person. My boss is not another staff person. My boss is the president, which is the highest position, you know, of the college in terms of power structure. Entonces, eso me ha ayudado mucho, el hecho que yo reporto directamente al presidente. In terms of resistance, I gotta tell you, I have a big mouth. Yo tengo una voz bien amplia. I'm relentless. I don't give up. Yo no me rindo. Y yo sigo explicando, dando información, haciendo las preguntas. Hay veces, Frida, la herramienta, the tool that I have that I use the most is asking questions. The tool that I have that's been the most successful is just asking the dumb questions that are not dumb. So, para mí la herramienta que ha sido más efectiva es hacer las preguntas que nadie las ha hecho, primero, or maybe nobody's ever made them, or sencillamente una pregunta que se ve inocente, pero no es inocente. Yo tengo una lógica. I have a logic behind my question. And so el descubrimiento, so the discovery of what needs to happen for diversity, equity, and inclusion sometimes falls on me. Hay veces yo soy la persona que tengo que, to lead, tengo que iniciar algo, but oftentimes I'm propping up my peers to do their own discovery. So, School of Nursing, I'm just using this as an example. It's not true, but it's just an example, just to use it. Solamente estoy usando esto como un ejemplo, no es de verdad, pero es un ejemplo. Ok, escuela o colegio de enfermeras, de enfermería. ¿Cuántas enfermeras estudiantes tienen usted de color? How many students do you have, nursing students of color? Ok, ¿cuántas facultad? How many faculty do you have that are color? What is the student-faculty ratio? No le estoy diciendo you're wrong. Estoy diciendo cuál es. I'm asking a question. What is the student-faculty ratio? For every one Black faculty member, how many Black students do you have? Oh, you only have one faculty Black member that's Black, but you have 15 Black students. So the student-faculty ratio, equity ratio is 15 to 1. Do you see what I mean? Entonces, hay veces es haciendo la pregunta, it's doing the question and having them discover their own truth. That has been the most successful thing, because it's not going to be me to change it. It's going to be, it's not me. I don't have magic, dust to sprinkle around Rhode Island College to make everybody equitable. This is hard work and people have to do it on their own. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it, Frida.
Thank you so much.
I feel like I'm supported. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because there are some people on the call that are Rhode Island College employees. I really do. No, yo me siento apoyada y yo me siento como que yo puedo decirle al presidente cualquier cosa. I feel like I can say anything. Mm-hmm. I might not get done, or it might not be 100% what I want, but yo no tengo miedo de I don't have fear.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of my colleagues in other colleges and universities, that is not the case.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a question that I found in the chat, and then if students have any other questions, please think about them. And after we get to this one, we'll have maybe one last question or two. So Jennifer was asking, what advice do you have for incoming high school freshmen who are trying to balance pursuing an education and the responsibilities that come with being a first-generation student?
I would say do something nice for yourself. Haga algo bueno para ti mismo. Si tiene una bicicleta, vaya andando en bicicleta, go ride a bike, go for a walk. Balance, like to balance life, whether you work or you're responsible for your family or you have your own children, or you are pursuing higher education as a first-generation person. Always take care of your mental health. No se le olvide su salud mental. Hable con alguien. También, si usted tiene un consejero o si usted tiene una persona que es un confidante, confidant, if you have somebody that's a confidant or a best friend, un mejor amigo, mejor amiga, desahógese con ellos, like share things with your best friend or with somebody that you are particularly close to. Sometimes doing things for others, haz bien y no mires a quién, which is a saying that my father used to always say to me. Just do something good. Don't worry about who you're doing it for. Don't do it for the glory. Don't do it for the recognition. Just do it because it brings you back something good. I believe in that. I believe in like good energy. Cuando uno hace algo bien para su vecino, para alguien en su familia, o una persona who's a complete stranger, una persona que no conoce, esa energía le vuelve a uno. I believe in that. So I'm not super religious, although I do believe in God. Pero yo sí, I do believe that when you do something for others, that comes back to you, that energy comes back to you. So mental health, make sure that you're checking in with yourself. How are you feeling? If you need help, don't be afraid. Si usted necesita ayuda, si usted no se siente bien físicamente o mentalmente, emocionalmente, diga algo. Llame a alguien, dígale algo a alguien para que pueda recibir su ayuda. Mental health is real, especially with COVID, especially with isolation, con esta situación de pandemia que estamos viviendo. Las personas se sienten más ansiosas, más nerviosas, más estresadas. It's very depressed, depresionadas. Es muy importante que uno se cuide uno mismo. Porque you're the most important person that you have. You're the only person that you have. Usted es la única persona que usted tiene. Si usted no está bien, la gente que está alrededor de usted no está bien tampoco. So take care of yourself first.
Thank you. Do we have one last question from any of the students? I know this has been really wonderful. A lot of great advice and stories, but I think we can have one last question before we say goodbye to Ana. Anybody?
I really appreciate everybody's attention. Aprecio mucho su atención. You listening to me, que me escuchen. Un poquito de mi historia. Y ya saben, estoy en Rhode Island College. Si me necesitan o si quieren mandarme algún mensaje, tienen alguna pregunta, if you guys need anything or have a question, if you're pursuing your education at Rhode Island College, usted va a ser un estudiante en Rhode Island College, me visitan. Estoy en Roberts, I'm in Roberts Hall. 301, aunque ahora estamos virtual, obviamente estoy en mi casa, pero on the website, en la página de web de Rhode Island College está mi correo electrónico y mi teléfono si necesitan cualquier cosa. If you need anything, any question, aquí estoy. I'm here for you. Y gracias, Erin, por la invitación. Gracias.
Gracias a ti por su tiempo y todo. Thank you so much, for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm going to leave you so you can do your debrief.
Okay, thank you so much. Hasta luego.
Oh, there's one more question.
Carmen.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wrote a question in the chat, I think.
Just before you leave, it's a student, I believe, so.
What is the question?
I see. Phil is asking, what's your favorite part of your job?
Oh, what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing right now, absolutely. 100% lo que estoy haciendo ahora. Oh, the rest is just the rest. The rest is just no, para mí, si yo pudiera inspirar o hablar o conectarme con estudiantes that you all look like me, you're my reflection. I'm looking at myself right now. So that's a beautiful thing, right? For me to be able to look at my laptop screen and see my reflection, the future, it makes me feel really, really good that we're gonna be in good hands. me hace sentir muy segura que vamos a estar en buenas manos, pero me encantaría porque yo no tuve esto. I didn't have this. And so I know how important it is to grow, to to develop a sense of, hey, si ella lo hizo, yo también lo puedo hacer. If she did it, I can do it too. Oh, by the way, her struggles are my struggles. Or she has a very similar story than me. O esa conexión es algo tan valioso que a mí me encantaría hacerlo más de lo que estoy haciendo como una administradora, pero sí, this is my favorite part.
Thank you again. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. It was great seeing you.